Okay, in this video, we are going to start putting in our foundation walls for our house on the hillside. So in order to do that, we're going to move from our east elevation view. We're going to go in our lower left-hand project browser. We are going to double-click on foundation. What we do in Revit is we actually build the model the way you would actually build a real structure. So we're going to start with the walls on the lowermost level and work our way up, all the way up to the roof. So in this case, double click on 00 Foundation. You can see over here, when we renamed our levels and added our levels, the levels were added into our floor plans category here, and the new names show up here. So double click on 00 Foundation, and again, we're going to start building our model in kind of the intersection of the views of all four of these cameras. So what I want you to do now is go up here under our Architecture tab and click on Wall. And you can see under Properties, this Properties menu pertains to anything that's selected. So anything that you're currently working on, all the properties that pertain to that item will show up here. So when we selected Wall, we've got this first window here. There's a little drop-down category. We can use any one of these pre-created wall types in Revit. And at a later point in time, we can customize these things. We can make our own wall types. But for this exercise, we're simply going to use one of the wall types that come with Revit. And what I want you to do is go to this drop-down menu under Wall Types and use the scroll-down feature. And we are looking for the category called Retaining 12-inch concrete. We are going to build a retaining wall. This is the wall inset into our hill. It's going to hold the hill back, keep the hill from pouring into our house. So if we scroll down here, we're looking for retaining 12-inch concrete, and it's right here. These are all listed in alphabetical order, by the way. So you can look, there's exterior, foundation, generic, interior. So down here in the R's, it's the only R, retaining 12-inch concrete. Click on that, and now all of this information pertains to our retaining wall, our 12-inch thick concrete retaining wall. The next thing that I want you to do is we're going to look at this information here. Location line is the first window. Location line, if you click on it, it says wall center line, and we got a couple different options here. Core center line, finish face exterior, finish face interior, core face exterior, and core face interior. In a nutshell, location line is if you were to draw a wall in plan, and if a line somewhere within that wall were to represent the position of that wall, where would that line occur? It's kind of a complicated idea. But the location line is that part of a wall that if the wall got any thicker or thinner, if you had to change the wall, if you had to add material to it or take away material from it to make it either thicker or thinner, what part of that wall would remain in a constant location? A lot of the times, as an architect, I know where the outside face of that wall needs to be. So I will tell, normally I will set location line for finish face exterior, which means I can draw in a wall here and the exterior face of that wall will remain locked in place regardless of any kind of changes to the thickness to that wall, if I needed to make that wall thicker or thinner. Sometimes you might choose finish face interior if the inside face of the wall is what's important. If that needs to be locked into place in such a way that if the wall got thicker or thinner, that inside face would remain constant. It wouldn't change position. In what we're doing right now, let's actually set this for wall center line. If location line is set for wall center line, this means that if the wall were to get thicker or thinner, if we were to change the material composition of the wall, the middle of the wall would remain locked in place, and the outside would move in or out, and the inside face would move in or out. So for this example, we're just going to say location line, we're setting it for wall center line. Base constraint and top constraint, in addition to knowing where the location line for the wall is, base constraint and top constraint, just tell the computer where the bottom of the wall is, and where the top of the wall is. We need to set all these things before we can begin drawing our walls. So let's set height right here. Top constraint, set the height to go up to 0.2 entry level. And the base constraint, we're going to leave this at 0.0 foundation. If you don't tell the computer any other information, if you don't say that the wall needs to be higher than the floor level, it just assumes that the bottom of your wall will be on the level that you're currently working in. We're in our 0.0 foundation level, so it's just going to, the computer, unless told otherwise, is going to assume that the bottom of our wall, our base constraint, will be at that same level. And we're going to tell the computer that the top constraint needs to go up to level 0.2. So these walls that we're going to draw in just a second will actually go up a couple of levels. They'll go up through level 0.1 and conclude at level 0.2. Now what I want you to do is go to kind of the lower right area in the middle of all four of these cameras. So right about here, say. I want you to click and move the cursor to your left. And you can see as we're drawing it, distance shows up. As you're moving your cursor to your left, just type in 40 tick mark, 40 feet. You don't need to type this into any kind of special box. Just as you type, a box will appear where your distance will show up. Just type in 40 feet or 40 tick mark and hit enter. Then move your cursor up. Move your cursor up 90 degrees. It'll kind of snap to a 90-degree position. But move your cursor up and type in 22 feet and hit enter. And then move your cursor to the right and again enter 40 feet. And it will kind of snap. It sort of knows that you might want to put in, but you can just type in 40 feet, enter. So we've got this kind of U shape. At this point, hit escape. Hit the escape button on your keyboard. That gets you out of creating this chain of walls, and then I want you to go click on modify. That stops the whole action of drawing in any further walls at this point in time. So you should have this kind of, it looks kind of like a U or a C shape configuration of walls. If you've drawn it too close to these cameras, don't worry. These cameras can all be moved. These can all change position. Okay. At this point, let's keep rolling here. Let's put in a little bit of terrain. Actually, before we do that, let's take a look at our work here. It looks like we've got 3 walls that we've created. Every now and then, I will check my work. I will toggle back and forth between a plan view and a 3-dimensional view just to make sure that what I'm drawing is indeed what I want my design to be. To toggle into a 3D view, go up here to the top of our screen, and it's 2 commands over from the thin lines option. It looks like a little house. And if you hold your cursor over the house for a second, it'll say default 3D view. Click on that default 3D view, and you can see here's what we just created, these 3 walls. They're going from level 0.0 foundation up to level 0.2 entry level. And you can kind of wheel out on your mouse or wheel in. If you need to rotate around, we got this cube here. Click on any of the corners of the cube, and you can see it'll quickly rotate you around. You could also click on the cardinal directions and see elevations. If you get in here, and if you get into an elevation view and you need to get back to a 3D view, click on the little house icon up here, and that takes you back to your standard 3D view. And you can also click on the faces of the cube. Click on the top or bottom of the cube to see plan views. But let's go back to our 3D view. This looks like what we want it to be. So go to your project browser, double click on 0.0 foundation. And at this point, we're going to create some terrain here. Okay, actually, I stand corrected. I'm going to add a few more foundation walls, and then we will create our terrain. So what we want to do is we want to complete the shape of our foundation here. So make sure that architecture is selected. Go to wall again, and when we click wall, the retaining wall that we were just using shows up. This time we're gonna change one of the parameters. We are going to complete this shape. We're going to enclose this shape, but we're going to use some walls that are not quite as tall as our previous walls. So what I want you to do this time We're going to leave location line as wall center line. Base constraint will be 0, 0 foundation. Top constraint, however, we want these to go up to, we're going to click on where it says up to level O2 and select up to level 01 lower level. And at this point, what I want you to do is, and you can see our cursor is a cross again. This will allow us to continue placing walls. I want you to kind of wheel in on our original starting point at this lower right-hand corner. And what I want you to do, get really close, and you can kind of put your cursor, as you get your cursor close to the starting point, it will snap to the midpoint of the wall. That's what we want it to do. So I want you to get your cursor close to the midpoint of the wall, and when the little purple box lights up, click there. This time pull to the right. And as you're pulling the right, type in 6 feet 6 inches. You could either type in 6 tick mark, 6 double tick mark, or 6.5 tick mark. Either will get you there. 6.5 feet, enter. Then I want you to go straight up, 90 degrees up, and type in 5 feet, enter. And then I want you to move your cursor to the right again, straight to the right, 10.5 feet, 10 feet 6 inches, or 10.5 feet, enter. And then I want you to do this. Go straight up, and you can kind of wheel out or wheel in as you need to. Go straight up until you see the dashed line that indicates that your cursor position is in line with the center of this northern wall here. Take it to this point where you see this blue dashed line show up. When you see the blue dashed line, click, move your cursor to the left until it neatly joins up with the wall that was already there. At that point, hit Escape on your keyboard and hit Modify on your toolbar, and then wheel out. This is the shape that we want, and let's take a look at it in 3D. If we click on our default 3D view, this is how we want this thing to look right now. And the idea is that over on this end, this is the high part of our hill. This is the low part of our hill. So we want the hill to kind of gently slope down here, and we want this little space to allow us to have a little walkout onto the lower portion of the hill. That's what we're doing here. Now we're at a good point where we can create some terrain. So in this case, what I want you to do now is go over to our project browser and go under floor plans, go to 02 entry level and double click on it. And we can kind of see, we can see ghosted in these 3 walls. These 3 walls come all the way up to 02 entry level and stop there. That's why we're seeing the edge of these. The walls that we just put in stop at a level below, at 01 lower level. So we're not seeing those in this view. Okay, now I want you to wheel out on your mouse. And we are going to create a view here. We're going to create a camera view, a 3-dimensional view in perspective of our model here. So this time, kind of zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole assembly of parts here. Go up here to our default 3D view, but don't click on default 3D view yet. I want you to go to the little drop-down menu beside default 3D view and click on that. And we've got a couple different options here, default 3D view, camera, and walkthrough. I want you to select camera. Click on camera, and you'll see that now attached to our cursor is a little Nikon camera here. And what I want you to do is get kind of right about here. Get to the northeast of our project, roughly right about here. It doesn't matter where precisely you are. This is just a very approximate location. But get right about here and click your mouse button and drag your cursor down. What we're seeing is when we clicked our mouse button, that's the position of our camera. And as we pull our mouse down, our cursor down, this is the cone of vision. This is what your camera sees from that vantage point. This middle line here represents how far your camera is seeing. The other sides of this cone indicate the left and right edges of your view from the camera. Revit is kind of strange in that when you create 3-dimensional views of your model, you can have your eyesight stop at some given point in time. That's what's represented by this middle line here. So you don't want your eyesight to stop and have a patch of white in your field of view in the middle of your house. So pull the middle line well past your project. That will ensure that you are seeing your building in its entirety. So pull it back so you have something like this. Just simply stretch your middle line well past the foundation that we are creating. And when you get it something that looks like this, click with your mouse. And you can see here, this is our foundation that we've created. It's in 3D, but unlike our standard 3D view, which had no perspective to it, this one has perspective. Things are converging. I'm going to wheel out just a little bit. And what you can do is each of these knobs on the edge of your field of view, you can click it and hold your mouse button down and kind of stretch it out a little bit. So you can make this, you can enlarge your image. So it really doesn't matter so much where your camera position is because you can modify all this stuff just by grabbing the knob, holding your mouse button down, and stretching it out. So this looks pretty good. What I want you to do now is go down here to this button here. Remember in the first video we talked about detail level. Select detail level for fine. And then also go to the next box over. It kind of looks like a cube. If you click on that, we've got a couple of different graphic display options. I guess this is called visual style. If you hover over it, it's called visual style. Hidden line is the one that we've been working in. Hidden line is just outlines around your objects and you can't see through them. They're not transparent. Set it for shaded. That just turns on some basic color here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in our topography, add in our sloping hillside, and we'll see how that will automatically update this view that we're creating. Now I want you to go over to our project browser in the lower left-hand corner. Scroll down. We're going to scroll down to a category called 3D Views, which is right here. It comes right after Ceiling Plans. Hit the plus beside 3D Views, and you'll see 3D View 1 is highlighted. That's the view we're currently looking at. Every time you put a camera in and add views, you'll see them listed over here. We're going to rename this. We'll call this To the Building. So to rename it, put your cursor over the name of the view, right-click, and opt for Rename. And we'll call this To the Building. This is the view to the building. And we'll hit OK. And you can see it renames your view here. Now we're going to go back. We can go back to any other level that we want to. 01 lower level. And if we needed to recover that 3D view, we just go down to 3D Views, double-click on To the Building, and that view is brought back up again. So we're going to leave our 3D view, we're going to leave it here at this point in time, and we're going to continue adding our topography. Okay, so topography, we're going to go in our project browser, lower left-hand corner here. We're going to scroll up. Under floor plans, we got all the levels that we created earlier, but there's an additional level here called Site. Site is not a level that shows up in your floor plans. It's a level that's created by default in Revit when you create a new project. This is a level where you are able to put in any kind of topography, any kind of site stuff you can put in this site level. So double click on the word site. And you can see the cameras look a little different. They're a little larger and clunkier. We have this blue symbol here. Honestly, I don't know what this blue symbol means. But when things kind of look like this and you see site is selected, you're in a view that it's not one of your floor levels. This is something automatically created that allows you to put in topography. What I want you to do is just wheel out a little bit here so we can see our whole group of things here. And this time we're going to go up to, we're going to put in topography. So we're going to leave the architecture tab and we're going to go over to, where is it? It's not add-ins, it's not modify. Sometimes you just got to, massing and site. Okay, we're putting in a site. Obviously it's under the massing and site tab. So once you've clicked on that, click on Topo surface. I'm going to walk you through this. This is kind of a complicated process, but if you do it slowly, step by step, it's not too bad. The whole idea is here, we are going to make up our own topography. We're going to invent our own hillside. We will improvise it here, and I'll show you how. Typically, the way topography normally works is you might have an AutoCAD topographic plan that maybe a surveyor has created, and you could import that into Revit and then trace over the topography lines, creating your own topography. Since we don't have that here, we're simply going to make it up. So I want you to go up here, click on Topo Surface, and what we're going to do is, this is something you'll see a lot in Revit. In Revit, you can draw the perimeter of a number of different things, and if you're happy with how the thing looks, you hit the green check mark. If you don't like it and want to start over again, you hit the red X. We'll see this later on as we add things like floors and roofs to our project. I just want you to get familiar with seeing this. The first thing that we're going to do, having hit Topo Surface, is we're going to go over to this little window that says elevation, and by default 0 feet 0 inches is typed in there. We are going to change this. So highlight elevation, and I want you to change this to -6 inches, and you can use the double tick mark. So change elevation to -6 inches and hit enter, and when you do that, it'll say -0 feet 6 inches. What I want you to do, and we'll just do this kind of slowly and carefully, is roughly put your cursor about here to the northwest of our project, and give yourself a little bit of breathing space between the project. I want you to improvise just a set of maybe 9 points. We're just going to make up some points here, and they don't all have to be in a nice neat line. Actually kind of stagger them a little bit, because we're improvising a topographic line. So I'm going to click, 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 and you can see as I make up this topographic line, Revit is filling in. It's joining these things up. It's creating this particular topographic layer. So I've got a handful of these. I don't even know how many dots I did. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I got 10 dots there. Okay, at this point, we don't hit enter or anything, but what I want you to do is now go back to our elevation window, and we're going to change this. Highlight -6 inches and change this to -10 feet. And you can hit enter. And this time, we're going to get roughly in line with this first dot, but also roughly in line with maybe kind of the middle of our foundation. Get over here. This doesn't have to be super precise. We're just kind of making it up, and create a similar group of staggered dots. So I'm going to just go click, 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 click. I'm going right through my foundation. That's okay. Okay, and I've got something that kind of looks like that. Now, again, I don't hit enter or anything. I'm going to go over here to elevation, and this time I'm going to change it to -11 feet. And I'll tell you in a second why we're doing all this. If I type in -11 feet, enter, and then way over here, I'm going to start, click, 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 something like that. At this point in time, I'm happy with what I've created. If you've got something like this on your screen, this is the way it should look. If you've got something even remotely similar to this, I want you to go to the green check mark and hit the green check mark. What that's done is we've created a piece of topography. Now I'm going to click on the modify icon, so I'm not making any commands here. My cursor is in neutral. I'm not doing anything. But what we did was we started here. Initially we said that this end was going to be the high point of our hill, and this end was going to be the low point of our hill. So what we did was we made up a topographic line that represented 6 inches below our 0, 0 elevation marker. So our first topographic line was started off at just minus 6 inches below the 0, threshold, 0 feet 0 inches. Then we made a second topographic line right here that was at minus 10 feet 6 inches. So it was further down the hill, and the computer automatically put in little 1 foot increments to transition from our first line to our second line. So every foot we drop down from minus 6 inches to minus 10 foot 6 inches. So it put in little 1 foot intervals here. And then our third topographic line was minus 11 feet. So we went for, I guess this was minus 10 feet, not 10 feet 6 inches. So we went from minus 6 inches to minus 10 feet. We had a pretty steep drop, and then we went from minus 10 feet to minus 11 feet, a more gradual drop. And that's why the elevation change from here to here is just a foot. That's why we don't have any intervening lines here, because this is much less steep than this is. Let's go to our 3D view and see how things are looking. So if we go to our 3D house view, this is what we've created so far. And we can actually go here and do the same thing that we did on our to the building view. We'll change it to fine resolution, and we'll change this to shaded. So we can see we've got a hillside here. It's kind of steep at this first half, and then kind of levels out, but it's still rolling downward. The next thing that we need to fix is the earth. The mud is sliding through our house. So we're going to fix that and conclude this video with that. So what I want you to do is go back to the underfloor plans, go back to site, like this. And this time, we're going to cut a hole in our hill. And we're going to put in a building pad, a concrete slab that our building is set in, that's inset into the hole we just cut in our hillside. So to do that, we're going to go up to this command here called building pad. And if I click on building pad, all we need to do is we just need to draw a line around the outside shape of our house and hit our green check mark, and we'll have an instant hole cut into the hill that's filled in with a slab. We could use lines to draw this, but check this out. This is my favorite command in Revit. This is called pick lines. Rather than having to draw lines, if you've got something in place that shows where the line needs to occur, you can use this. And I'll show you what I mean. Pick lines. So what I want to do is I want to create an outline around the exterior of my configuration of foundation walls that the computer and let the computer know that that outline is going to be the hole that I'm cutting in my slope. I'm going to use the pick lines command. So if I click on pick lines, I can click on this outside face line here. I can click on this outside face line here. And you see it's, the computer is turning it into pink lines once I've selected them. I can click on this outside face here. I can click on this outside face here, this outside face here, and this outside face here. It kind of, if we zoom in, we can see that these two lines don't quite join up. This line, this pink line goes up here. This pink line stops short here. That's when we're going to use our trim extended corner. We can hit trim extended corner and click on this line and click on this line. It just joins those two together. Let's take a look and make sure that all of our lines are joined at the corners. This all looks good. We've got, what we want is a closed shape. If we were to hit the green check mark and there was a gap or two of these lines weren't meeting, we'd get a warning from Revit saying, hey, you gotta fix that before we can proceed. This command, trim extended corner, is very much like the fillet command in AutoCAD. If you're familiar with AutoCAD, you use the fillet command with a radius usually of 0 to create a nice crisp corner. Here in Revit, you just click on trim extended corner and you click the two lines you want to join, and it automatically turns it into a nice corner. So we've got this pink outline around the outside of my configuration of foundation walls. If I hit the green check mark and I did everything right, this is what happens. Blue just tells me this is something new that's been selected. If I click outside the area, the blue goes away. And let's go now to our 3D view. Let's hit modify just to get out of that command. Go up here to our 3D view and click it. Look at what we've done. The mud is no longer washing its way through our house. We've cut a hole in the hill and we put a little concrete slab in here. That was all done with this building pad. And now we'll go and take a look at the 3D view we created earlier, to the building view. So go down to your project browser, lower left corner, scroll down to 3D views. Here's to the building. If we double click on that, here's what we're looking at. And again, we can kind of, if we need to, we can pull these little knobs out and see a little bit of more of what's going on. We're going to continue building our house here, and in this view, the view will automatically update, and we'll see the entire structure at the end of this sequence of tutorials. Okay, at this point, hit Control plus S, save your work, and this video will conclude, and in the next one, we'll start adding exterior walls on top of our foundation.